It started with the spare key under the ceramic frog by my front door. The one I'd hidden there after moving into the craftsman bungalow on Maplewood Drive. I'd hired him off a laminated flyer stapled to the grocery store bulletin board. Handymen CS no to us MNL. His name was Carl, and he smelled like sawdust and mint gum, his hands calloused but precise as he fixed my leaky kitchen sink. I didn't think twice when he asked to use the bathroom, not until I heard the jingle. Not the dull clatter of a single ring, but a cascading metallic whisper, like wind chimes made of bone. I froze, dishcloth clenched in my fist, staring at the hallway where he'd disappeared. When he emerged smiling politely, I told myself it was the pipes. Old houses play tricks. But that night, as I triple-checked the deadbolt, I noticed scratches around the keyhole, thin, fresh gouges in the brass. Carl came back twice. The bathroom sink clogged again. The porch light flickered. Each time the jingling followed him louder, hungrier. After the third visit, I found my dresser drawers slightly ajar, my jewelry box shifted an inch to the left. Nothing stolen, just considered. I stopped sleeping. I bought cameras. The kind that ping your phone with alerts. They captured nothing but shadows, but the sounds God the sounds. Scraping at the basement door. A faint, rhythmic jingle in the walls. I confronted him on his fourth visit, my voice trembling as he replaced a cracked outlet. "Did you make copies of my keys?" He stared at me, grease under his nails, his eyes flat as dimes. "Why would I do that, Mom?" The mint on his breath felt like a threat. That night, the cameras caught him standing at the foot of my bed, staring at the pillow where my head should have been. Except I wasn't there. I was crouched in the closet, phone buzzing with alerts, watching him tilt his head and smile at the empty sheets. The police found nothing. No forced entry. No car. The flyer was gone from the grocery board, the number disconnected. "Paranoia," the officer said, pity sharp in his voice. "Happens a lot to folks living alone." But I wasn't alone. Not anymore. I heard Carl in the crawlspace jingling, always jingling, his voice humming through the vents at 3 a.m. No job too small. I moved. A studio apartment above a Thai restaurant, 3 towns over. New locks, no spare key. Then, on the first night, as I scrubbed take-it curry from a plastic fork, the pipes groaned. A sound like coins spilling inside the walls. I peeled back the wallpaper. There, wedged behind a rotted beam, was a single key. And another. And another. Dozens of them, strung on a wire, gleaming like a spider's web. I followed the wire through the wall, my hands raw from tearing at the plaster, until I found it a nest of keys. Hundreds, maybe thousands, threaded through every beam and pipe. Yale Schlage Quickset, all pristine, all stamped with addresses. My old house on Maplewood, my neighbor's condo, the Thai restaurant below me, and in the center, dangling from a rusted nail, a Polaroid of a little girl. Curly hair, gap-toothed smile, missing since 1997, according to the faded headline glued beneath it. Carl's smile. The restaurant owner found me at dawn, bleeding, the keys tangled in my hair. He called the cops, muttering about squatters and meth. They didn't believe me about the photo, but they believed the keyring in my fist. 37 keys, all labeled with my name. Now, in the secure women's shelter, I hear jingling in the vents. The social worker says it's the radiator. She says Carl doesn't exist, that the man in the photo died in a fire years ago, that grief does ugly things to people. But last night, as I scratched at the plaster above my cot, the dust tasted like mint. And this morning, under my pillow, a single key warm from the heat of my skin, stamped with the shelter's address. They're changing my room today, putting me somewhere with better airflow. I don't bother explaining. He's in the walls now, in the pipes, in every keyhole, in every door of every place I'll ever hide. Because Carl isn't a man. He's the creak before the floorboard gives. The shadow that outruns your flashlight. The jingle you swear is just the wind. But you'll check your locks tonight, won't you? Go ahead. He's already inside. The first time I heard footsteps in my apartment, I told myself it was the old building settling. But when the creak of floorboards echoed down the hall at 2 a.m., my throat tightened around the lie. I'd hired Mr. Holloway 3 weeks earlier to fix my sticking front door. He'd smelled like cedar shavings and peppermint gum. His hands calloused but precise as he jingled a ring of keys from his tool belt. "Locksmithing's my side hustle," he'd said, winking when I asked why he carried so many. Folks around here love a man who can keep secrets. The noises started the night after he left. There were whispers of movement in rooms I just vacated. My coffee mug would mysteriously appear in the freezer. A faint indent was left on my pillowcase when I returned from work. I triple-checked the locks and installed a camera above the door, only to find nothing but static after midnight. My friends thought I was paranoid. "You live alone in the city," they laughed. "Earbuds and melatonin, girl." But then I found the first photograph. It slid out from between the pages of my library book. A Polaroid of me asleep on the couch, taken through my living room window. The timestamp on the TV screen matched the night Holloway had fixed my door. My skin prickled as I flipped the photo over. "You look peaceful," it said, scrawled in grease pencil. I called the police. They found no fingerprints and no signs of forced entry. "Change your locks," the officer advised, eyeing my trembling hands. "And maybe get a dog." When I requested new deadbolts, Holloway answered on the first ring. "Be there in 20, he said. His van idled outside for 10 minutes before he knocked, his shadow stretching through the peephole. When I opened the door, his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Nervous?" he asked, nodding at the baseball bat in my grip. "Smart. This neighborhood's gone downhill." He worked slower this time, humming as he drilled. I caught him staring at my family photos, his thumb rubbing the teeth of a key in his pocket. "You've got a real eye for antiques," he said, lingering by my grandmother's jewelry box. Shame to leave valuables unprotected. That night my camera captured him, not on the porch, but in my bedroom doorway at 3:17 a.m. backlit by the fridge light downstairs. His silhouette sharpened as the footage glitched, his hand extending toward the bed where I lay unconscious. I vomited watching it. The police found no trace of him. "Camera's malfunctioning," they said. "Motion sensors triggered by shadows." The next morning my spare keys were gone. I moved methodically, installed steel-reinforced doors, barred windows, paid a security deposit in cash for a studio across town. But as I hauled the last box to my car, Mrs. Ruse from 3B stopped me. "Your handyman's been asking about you," she said, clutching her terrier. "Left this in my mailbox by mistake." The envelope contained a brass key labeled Unit 6B, my old apartment, and a receipt from Holloway's locksmith services dated yesterday. Every itemized entry sent ice through my veins. Front door, X6 copies, bedrooms 2, jewelry box, 6 window. He'd made a key for every lock he'd installed. I drove straight to his shop, the bat on the passenger seat. The address led to a boarded-up laundromat. Through a cracked basement window I saw them. Walls covered with Polaroids of women in bedrooms, kitchens, showers. My face stared back from every corner. Workbenches groaned under key cutting machines, each labeled with apartment numbers. A corkboard mapped our routines. Yoga classes, night shifts, dog walks. Footsteps echoed behind me. "You shouldn't be here," Holloway said, blocking the exit. His tool belt chimed as he stepped into the light, holding a key identical to mine. "But since you are, let's discuss upgrades." I swung the bat. He lunged. We crashed into shelves of key blanks that rained down like metallic confetti. His fingers closed around my ankle as I scrambled up the stairs. I didn't breathe until I'd burned every photo, shredded every map, melted every key in the shop's furnace. The police found no evidence again. I'm writing this from my new apartment, where the locks were installed by a woman with no side hustles. But last night, as I triple-checked the deadbolt, Mrs. Ruse called. "That nice handyman left another envelope," she said. "You want me to bring it over?" Through the phone I heard it, the faint jingle of keys. It started with the keys. I'd hired him to fix a leak under the sink. A wary man with a peppermint-scented breath and a toolbox older than my apartment complex. He called himself a handyman. But there was something rehearsed about the title, like he'd practiced saying it in a mirror. I didn't think twice when he asked for my keys to check the deadbolt. Not until I heard the metallic snick of a key being cut. I froze in the kitchen doorway. He was hunched over my counter, a small silver device in his hands, my spare key clamped inside. "Just making sure it's a perfect fit," he said without turning around. His voice was syrup smooth, but his fingers trembled as he slid the copy into his pocket. I fired him on the spot. He left without protest, humming a nursery rhyme I couldn't place. The first sign was the coffee mug. I always left it handle facing east, a neurotic habit from my therapists. grounding techniques. But the next morning, the handle pointed west. Then came the footsteps, soft, deliberate creaks in the hallway at 3:17 a.m., precise as a metronome. I installed cameras, but the feeds glitched into static each night. My landlord shrugged. "Old building," he said. "Wiring's haunted." But I knew. The handyman's face flickered in every shadow. His too white smile, the way he'd stared at my family photos a beat too long. I found the first note taped to my bathroom mirror a week later. "You should really water the ficus," it read, in handwriting identical to mine. My ficus was wilting. I told him that, hadn't I? Rambled about my plants while he pretended to fix the sink. That night I dragged a dresser in front of the door and slept with a knife under my pillow. But the noises didn't stop, they crept closer. It wasn't until I stumbled on the forum that the pieces clicked. A thread buried in a DIY subreddit, posted by a user named Keymaster76D. Replicating lives. It was titled. The post detailed a man's obsession with perfecting homes he'd been hired to fix, copying keys, studying routines, rearranging furniture inch by inch to mirror his own preferences. "It's not enough to enter," he wrote. "They have to too become like me." The comments were a graveyard of deleted accounts, but one reply remained. "He tried my locks last month. Now my dog won't stop growling at the closet." I spent hours cross-rendering security footage, zooming in on the handyman's tool belt. There, beside the wrench, a key-cutting device, sleek and modern. The same one he'd used on my keys. The same one, I realized, that could have made a dozen copies while I'd blinked. The confrontation happened in a drizzle-soaked parking lot. I'd tracked him to a diner off Route 9, where he sat alone, methodically dissecting a slice of cherry pie. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "You're early," he said, as if we'd planned it. I slapped the forum printouts on the table. "Why my home?" He smiled, fork scraping the plate. "You're organize it," he said. "A place for everything, easy to adjust." He leaned closer, peppermint sharp on his breath. "But you noticed too fast. Most don't." I ran, changed my locks, hired a security firm, slept in hotels. But hotels have keys too. Last night, I woke to the smell of peppermint. My dresser lay splintered against the wall, the door swinging open. Shadows pooled in the hallway, and there he stood. Not a ghost, not a monster, just a man holding a ring of identical keys. "Shush," he whispered, pressing a finger to lips that mirrored my own chapped grin. "Almost perfect." I stabbed him, or tried to. The knife sank into the wall as he slipped past, calm as a tenant late on rent. By the time I'd yanked it free, he was gone. But he left something behind, a single key on my pillow, warm from his pocket. The security firm found nothing. No fingerprints, no footprints, just a faint hum tune lingering in the vents. I moved today. The new apartment has fingerprint locks, no spare keys, windows that don't face the street. But as I unpacked, I found my coffee mug handle facing west, and a note in my handwriting, a "see you soon," somewhere a key turns.